Welcome back to this week's episode of the Campfire Series podcast. Today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. I am your host, Logan Sofarenko. Be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all those awesome platforms. We have a very special guest joining us today for this week's episode of our theater edition. From the original Broadway cast of Jagged Little Pill, please welcome Mr. Sean Allan Krill.
I'm Sean Allan Krill, and I am in Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. It's paused right now. It's been paused for about a little over 3 months, but hopefully we'll be getting back to it whenever we can safely do that.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, theater community is always nice and strong. Tell us a little bit about Jagged Little Pill and about it's rising up as a cult favorite right now, this Broadway season. So tell us a little bit about the show itself.
Well, it's the story of a family, the Healys, who live in a sort of a fictional town in Connecticut. Very well-to-do, seemingly perfect, and really what this show is about is sort of cracking all of that open, the sort of misconceptions and the falsehoods involved in that sort of necessity that we can sometimes feel as Americans, that we have to sort of present this perfection, this sort of veneer of perfection, because once you see really into the nitty-gritty of their lives, you see that they have a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges that they're facing, as a lot of people in the country and the world are, and it's really about them as a family figuring out how they can get through that together.
Yeah, absolutely. My a friend of mine is a very big fan of Jagged Little Pill, and this is the question per her request.
Okay.
It's a very heavy plot, and the question is, how do you at the end of the night after a show, and sometimes after a 2-show day, how do you kind of gather yourself back as the part you're playing, and now coming back into the mold of being Sean?
Right. Well, the character I play is Steve Healy, and he is dealing with a lot, as is everyone in the show, everyone in the family, I would say I spend a good 98% of the night sort of living in a state of frustration and anger and confusion, and just feeling really lost and a bit helpless. And so that really can wear on you, especially 8 shows a week. So I usually, and I have for many years, actually, I give myself a little ritual if the show is sort of emotionally draining, which this one certainly is. I give myself a little ritual at the end of the night and kind of attach it to a physical action. I turn off the lights to my dressing room, and I just take a moment to say to myself, good job. I still care about this, but I'm leaving it here. And there's something about that just sort of allows myself, emotionally, spiritually, physiologically, to just let it go for a little bit until I absolutely have to deal with it again the next show. Yeah.
Do you have your own dressing room?
I do.
I'm sure that's obviously an advantage when it comes to
It really is.
Yeah, like you said, putting it when you need to. But aside from that kind of aspect of it, what are some fun, cheerful ways you use your dressing room? You're flying solo at a Broadway theater, in a dressing room. What's that like?
Well, I decorated my room to sort of. I decided I wanted to give it a sort of a 60s cocktail / hookah bar feel. Ooh, so it's okay. It's a lot of dark colors and a lot of just sort of very welcoming. You kind of want to just cozy up in it. there's a lot of velvet, and it's all just very cozy and comfortable. So it is a little bit of a haven for me. I get to go there and feel very safe and kind of escape for a little bit. And yeah, and also just the people in the show are everyone across the board. It's just such an amazing group of people, and such a positive and collaborative, beautiful company, and so that helps a lot too. I mean, even if I don't get to escape to my dressing room, it's just it's a beautifully positive vibe backstage. So that's such a gift.
How impressed are you with a lot of there's young actors in your show, like teens playing teens. What is that like to kind of see there's like an older actor looking at these teens playing teens and doing it so well? What's that like?
It blows my mind. Are you kidding me? I mean, when we started doing this at ART a couple years ago, Antonio and Celia, Antonio who plays Phoenix, and Celia who plays my daughter Frankie, were both. I believe Celia had just turned 18. Antonio turned 18 during the run of our show, and then the whole company took a day off during the run so that they could go graduate high school. So
wow.
Yeah. So I mean,
Oh
I was just floored, because when I look back on where I was as an actor, as a performer when I was their age, I just don't think I could do what they do. They're absolutely incredible. Yeah, it blows my mind. I bow to them. I think they're just obviously very special performers, or they wouldn't be where they are at such an early, young age.
When you have the very awesome privilege of performing at the Broadhurst,
Yes.
I love that street. It has so many theaters. There's so much history behind that block. But what does the Broadhurst mean to you? Like, what's it like performing in that venue?
Wow, that's such a good question. The Broadhurst, to me, all I knew, I'm a huge, one of my inspirations since I was a very young human, not even just actor, but I was always like an icon. And my two sort of icons, the people that I respected the most as actors were, when I was a kid, were Gene Kelly and Katharine Hepburn. And so I was always into very old, like even as a young kid, I was very into older movies, and so I was just blown away by them, especially the more I was able to watch everything that they did, all of their, throughout their long careers. And to know that Katharine Hepburn performed at the Broadhurst, when I walked into that theater, I was like, this is crazy energy. I don't care how long ago it was. I am in the same theater, in the same space, and breathing the same air that Katharine Hepburn did, and that really just was very exciting to me. But there's so much history, like you said, on that street in general, and so I just thank my lucky stars every time I walk to work. I'm looking at the St. James and the Sardi's across the street, and it's Schubert Alley. It's all right there, and I just can't believe it. It's incredible.
How the show has gotten a lot of exposure. What has that exposure been like for you as an actor? And whether it comes to media interviews or just simply doing Instagram takeovers, anything like that. Like, what is the exposure of Jagged Little Pill? Like, how has it affected you, like, this year since it's been on Broadway?
Well, it's just been so overwhelmingly positive in general for the show. I mean, there are so many different, as your friend said, there's so many different storylines going on, and we're dealing with so much, and it is I believe, dealt with so much care and respect for the real people that are actually struggling with these issues. Or at least we're trying to do that, and the response has just been so positive. And personally, I get a lot of middle-aged people, whether they're men or women, but usually just parents in general, or people that are in a couple that dealing with being parents, dealing with supporting a family, dealing with the trials and tribulations of parenthood, and especially men my age, that I don't actually have a family, and I don't live in the suburbs. I'm very different from my character, but I really try to be as respectful as I possibly can to the men and women that are struggling with workaholism and all of those things, and the wedge that the time you have to spend at work in our culture, the wedge that can drive into your relationship with your partner and your kids and your life in general. And so I get a lot of people just coming up to me and thanking me, and it always just means the world to me that people are affected in such a positive way. They see themselves, and there's just something very cathartic about that, to go to theater and actually see people that are a lot of times presented as perfect, and you realize there is no perfect, there is no norm. Everybody is struggling with something, and I'm just really proud to be a part of that. So it's just been an incredible experience for me personally. I'm very, very proud to be a part of the show.
Well, I'm flying to New York next. Hopefully, once things are open as a graduation gift, I'm going to go to New York and see Jagged Little Pill. I'm very excited. But
Excellent.
you said a little earlier about how you have the ability to take the material that you perform during the show and put it aside and like put it there when it's needed, because that's how you do it 8 times a week. 8 times a week is really hard, and people want to be on Broadway, but they don't realize how hard it is. What are some like other physical ways you keep yourself in shape for doing a show? Also, taking care of your voice and just routine stuff like that.
Well, every show is a little different, but for the most part, in general, you have to make sure, especially when you're singing, you have to make sure you get a lot of rest. There's a lot of naps involved. There's a lot of for me, the kind of self-care I do is I'm just always checking in with myself, just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and making sure that I am self-care. I'm taking care of the sort of bruises and injuries I might give myself emotionally from just living in that for so long. Even if it, especially like on a 2-show day, as you mentioned, it can be pretty brutal. So and then you do practically, you have to do a warm up for each show. I usually do. I do a little bit of yoga. I make sure I warm up my voice, and a lot of water, a lot of water, and like I said, a lot of rest. Just trying to stay as healthy as possible so that you can get out there and do your job, and not not actually crack in half like the character is.
With right now, everyone, I've dealt with the idea of everyone going to college for musical theater, going to a really good musical theater college, and then talking about the move to New York, like when is the right time to do it. What is some advice you could give to young actors that are looking to either make the move to New York City to pursue Broadway, and another thing, like, would you recommend, like, do you have to go to a musical theater college to make it?
Well, I guess I'm proof that you don't have to. I did not. I mean, there are countless paths to where, to Broadway. I can't say that it wouldn't be an amazingly positive idea to go to a musical theater, and study a musical theater curriculum. But I didn't. I studied. I studied theater, acting, and I did do musicals in college, but that wasn't the sort of focus of my BFA. And so I just kind of fell into it, and I learned along the way of my own career a lot about singing and performing in musicals. And so, I mean, I'm here to tell you, like I said, there are so many different ways of getting getting there. And right now, as far as to answer your other question, as far as moving to New York, I think we're all a little bit in a holding, we're in a holding pattern. So what I think right now is a great time to move to New York and pursue musical theater or acting. It's really tricky right now for everyone in all over the country, as far as theater goes, because it is inherently, an art form that involves large groups. So it's tricky. It's going to be very interesting to see what the next few months show us as far as how we're going to be able to get back to what we do. Yeah.
What is some advice you can give to people, just with patience? Because we don't know what's going to happen like you said, in the next couple months. We want to see how it all plays out. What are some examples? Like, how do you stay patient and stay positive?
Well, I'm not always very good at that. I will admit. I have to be, like, full disclosure, I'm not a very patient person, but you do have to try to cultivate that as an actor in general, not even right now, just in general. There will be periods of time, if you are truly pursuing a career as a professional actor, there will be periods of time where nothing's happening. It just is the way it is. It's and that's rough, and it does require patience. And the best advice I can give is that, and it was advice that was given to me many years ago, is just take the time that you've got. It's kind of like what people are doing right now, I hope, anyway, with all of this sudden free time for those of us who can't work. We're sort of thrust into this position where we have loads of free time, and so it's about how you use that. You can use that time to work on your book if you're a singer. Work on the songs that you think you might do for auditions. Work on your monologues. Work on dialects. You can try to, in your downtime, realize that downtime is also a very active time for actors. You can use that as, then your job when you're not working is to audition and prepare for auditions. So it helps me to sort of think about this time when you're not working, not as just like, wow, I'm void right now. I'm not, I poor me. I don't have a gig. But the advice that was given to me was, when you're not working, your job as an actor is to prepare. And that really helps. You sort of think of it actively as an active thing that you're doing in that time.
You said a lot when you check in, mentally, physically, spiritually. If you don't mind me asking, is your spiritual life a very big part of you as an actor?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily, this sounds so trite, but I'm not necessarily a sort of religious person, but I am I do very, very much believe in a sort of, amazing higher power that sort of keeps our hearts beating and makes our bodies work when we're not even thinking about it. And I think that's amazing. I think we're all miracles, and I think the earth is a miracle. And so my spirituality very much sort of revolves around this idea that there's a little bit of magic in all of us, and our job as human beings is to cultivate that, find it, and focus on it, and spread it all around. And love. I'm very I'm basically a hippie, really. So yeah, that's my spiritual life. It's just like, find what you do, and then take that, and it will, if you love what you do, you're going to be full of joy, and that is going to be contagious.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, you said some perfect advice that I think was necessary to hear. When your job as an actor, when you're not working, is to prepare and just make yourself the best performer you can be. But also, so Jagged Little Pill has been on Broadway for how long now? It's been.
It opened in December, and then we ran until March 12th, which was the day that everything paused. So it was about, I guess, January, February, March, 3 months. It seems crazy that's all it was, but yeah, it was open for 3 months. We were in previews for about 6 weeks.
And then before the whole, Broadway open, you guys have been working on this show for a couple of years now, right? How long have you been with the whole team?
I joined when the show began rehearsals for ART in Cambridge, which was early 18.
Wow.
So I began sort of the delightful, amazing process of collaborating with the amazing creative team and all of these actors and creating Steve Healy in like March, I believe we began rehearsals, March of 18. There had been, I believe, a workshop and a reading before that, but not a full production. So I joined fairly early on in the process, but yeah, so it's been 2.5 years now.
That's crazy. And
yeah, it is.
Hopefully everything gets back and running, up and running after the whole shutdown. But also, before we sign off, what is just a message you want to just share? Anything just to like some encouragement for all of us, just a moral or anything like that.
Well, I think, we're living through a pretty historic time right now. This is going to go down in history as, I think, an incredible time of change and growth for not just this country, but the world. And I'm no sage of wisdom or anything, but I do think I have lived a little bit of a life, and I think that there is one of the things that helps me get through really challenging times is to remember that change always hurts a little bit, but that's a good thing because change is necessary, because it is full of possibility. It is rife with the chance to learn and grow, and it's full of enlightenment. And on the other end of it, I think that there is a way of looking at all of this that's happening in our country right now as a chance to sort of be a part of a really, truly amazing period of change for the world. How about that?
Could not have been said any better. I think the big takeaway is, change hurts, but it has a result. But we just gotta live through the pain a little bit, but also we all have to play our part. You and I, we are white men, and we can look at this as a time of like, okay, well, what can I learn from this? How can I look inward and go, what are my denials? What are my defenses? How do I quell that a little bit and just listen and learn and grow? And there's just so much. There are so many possibilities right now. Yeah,
I think it's all better.
I think if we use our voice and also practice really good active listening, take some criticism, because it happens with everything, and that's good, and that's part of it. But yeah. I really appreciate you coming on and just honestly educating me a little bit of a different side of theater, with a more heavy plot, and just telling us your stories and your wisdom at the end.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day.
Of course.
Have a great rest of your week, rest of your day, all of that stuff, and hopefully we get to see you back at the Broadhurst.
Yeah. I'll see you at the Broadhurst.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow us on Instagram at Campfire Series Podcast for awesome updates and just a good time. We'll see you next week. I'm Logan Sofarenko, signing off.